everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Brian, are you going to share your screen with the? Yeah, welcome to the Yellowdig fall kickoff session for, I believe it's 2021. Apparently last time I said 2001, and that's not quite accurate. I'm Bob Erdschak, and I'm here with my colleague, Brian Verdine, and we'll give a little bit of a further introduction in just a second. But basically, we are here today to refresh your recollection to all things Yellowdig, and if you're new to Yellowdig, to sort of give you an idea of what it is and how you can get the most out of it this semester in your courses. So let's move on to the next slide and sort of give a little bit of an overview. Like I said, we'll introduce ourselves a little bit. We'll talk about Yellowdig's design and pedagogy principles. In other words, remind you of why you're even using Yellowdig. And then we'll go through some of the platform, including some exciting updates to what you can expect there, and some reminders of some of the things you already have been using, and maybe some better ideas on how to get more out of them. And we'll be happy to take questions as we go along. There's a Q&A area at the bottom right of your Zoom window that I hope you can see. With that, why don't we go on to introductions? And without further ado, here is Dr. Brian Verdine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yellowdig's head of client success. So my background has all been in psychology and education. Got my PhD from Vanderbilt and then went to do a postdoc at the University of Delaware. Started dabbling in educational technology and started with Yellowdig a little over 3 years ago, doing a lot of research into the platform. And so I talk with our instructors around how to get the best out of it based on our data. And I also run our support operations. So I see the things that students and instructors are enjoying and not. So I get a good sense of sort of what's driving the best outcomes from that standpoint as well.
And I'm Bob Erdschak. I'm Yellowdig's Senior Academic Solutions Architect, and I come to Yellowdig with a higher ed background. A little before the turn of the century, I transitioned from a law career into teaching in higher education and went on to become a faculty developer instructional technologist. And while at around the turn of the century, and while I love the promise of online learning, I don't believe that the tools or the pedagogy at that time really created the learning community or student engagement that I was looking for. So I left that and I went on to teach political science for over a decade and tried all kinds of other crazy tools in my own courses to increase engagement and outside of the learning management systems, but they came with their own set of problems. And now I was extremely excited about it a little over a year and a half ago to find Yellowdig and work with our partners to help them get the most out of it, because it really does what we say it does, and it can bring that engagement and learning community to your courses. All right, let's move on. We can go to the next one. Yeah. So for those of you who like to use QR codes, you can use this little QR code to take our instructor certification course, a 1-hour course. If you haven't already taken it, that will really reinforce all the things that we're talking about here today, and hopefully help you get on your way. If you want to have any kind of time with me to discuss your specific course and how you can use Yellowdig to really get that learning community going, feel free to reach out at bob@yellowdig.com. By the way, let us know if you use these QR codes. It'd be interesting. We're just experimenting with them and interested in if anyone finds them to be useful. So as you're using Yellowdig and you and your students are using Yellowdig, if you encounter any technical issues, your best bet for the quickest response is our wonderful support team, support@yellowdig.com. That will ensure that eyes are on that and they'll get back to you very quickly. As you're going through before you go to that, excuse me, let me rephrase that. Before you go to the support@yellowdig.com, our knowledge base is a great place to answer any questions that you have. It's well organized. and it really is thorough, and it can get you to the answers that you're looking for. By the way, we'll show you something in the platform related to that as well. Brian and I host monthly office hours sessions where you can really just ask any questions that you want. We like to focus on your role, that role of the instructor in those, but this is your time, and you can ask us whatever you want. I believe the next one is the 18th of September. And then finally, the YISC, the Yellowdig Instructor Support Community, is a place you can join. It's a Yellowdig community where you can ask any questions or share your teaching tips, your Yellowdig tips with other instructors from around the globe. All right, let's get into it, shall we, Brian?
All right.
So I guess this one, me or you?
I think it's me. You know, historically, as I started with Yellowdig, we were thinking a lot around how to build a robust, complete educational experience. And obviously, as a sort of social learning style platform, we thought that the social piece of a lot of classrooms is what is missing. And specifically for students to have social presence in their courses, to really project themselves socially and emotionally into those spaces as real participants in their education. Um, and what we found sort of historically is that uh, cognitive and teaching presence were designed into courses really thoughtfully, and worked out in terms of all types of course design. Um, but a lot of times social presence was kind of assumed to be happening, or assumed to be handled by the fact that there was a campus. And what we've really kind of found, in terms of student retention and building a really good student experience is that it's not safe to assume that the social presence part of things is being handled just because people are sharing the same physical space. Certainly, online courses, you have to design in opportunities for real social presence. Even just having good social tools in some cases doesn't actually add social presence if students aren't willingly participating in using them and actually, uh, you know, having conversations with each other, with their instructor. Um, and finally, what we found was a lot of the parts of course design that were intended to add social presence had a strong assessment sort of component to them, which in a lot of cases would sort of make it a high stakes uh, um, kind of experience, and would often tamp down whether students really thought of each other as social partners, right? Having an assignment can make the students all focus on the instructor. So those are some things that we noticed at Yellowdig and that we've been trying to uh, really make sure that we can build that social presence into the educational experience.
And I would just add that, let's talk about that. Social presence is really important. It's fundamental. It allows students to share perspectives with each other, to find relevance, to relate real world activities to what's going on, and to share their perspective with each other. So it is a vital one of those. It is a vital pillar there. All right.
Yeah, and so the sort of typical social assignment that we saw in the landscape when we were really starting up Yellowdig was, um, that typically an instructor comes in, provides an assignment, and that students have a week or maybe 2 weeks, but a certain deadline that they have to have finished that assignment by, and usually it goes something like post a response to whatever the instructor has them do, and then students should discuss those initial responses to the instructor. And what we found in sort of the standard discussion space, or even a lot of other types of social assignments, is that initial assignment or that initial prompt ends up creating a strong focus on the instructor rather than other students. And with a deadline and a sort of new assignment each week, you get cold starts, where the first students in are responding to the instructor, but they don't actually have anybody to talk to. Um, and then with the due date, students kind of perceive that they can wait until right before the due date to participate. All of those things actually hurt the social presence, actually hurt students talking with one another, because students that are coming in early actually learn that they're better off procrastinating. And those students that are procrastinating are actually not having a social experience at all. So if you think about this last student or last couple of students that come in at the end of each week, they're responding to the instructor. They're responding to things that other students, created earlier, but nobody is ever reading what they posted and responding to them, right? So they're literally not having a social experience, because then the next week starts and everybody starts on the next topic.
I just want to add two things to that, Brian. And first of all, that focus of that conversation is not a natural conversation. It's, again, something aimed at the instructor, students writing because they need to satisfy the instructor requirement, and that's who the audience is. And also that even if these students aren't procrastinators by nature, they're viewing this as an assignment with a due date, and they organize their lives accordingly. They have other things to do that wait until Sunday at midnight to do this because this is when it's due, and they've got to finish their other stuff first.
You want to take this one, Bob?
Yeah, sure. So this is the Yellowdig paradigm, the way that we look at the community and the way that we think that it really thrives. And as you can see, first of all, on the left, at the beginning of all those conversations, those dots and dashes, the instructor was at the beginning of every one of those conversations in the previous slide. Here, it's the instructor, students asking questions. We're giving students agency to sort of direct their own learning related to the course content, those course relevant conversations. And those dots indicate conversations that don't necessarily have to end at the end of a week, that they can reemerge, they can go silent for a while, but then reemerge if something is happening in the real world, or if students' own experiences relate to that topic as the conversation, as the semester continues. For example, in my own classes, teaching American government, in week 2, we talk about the Constitution, and part of the Constitution deals with the presidential election. You may have heard there was a presidential election last fall, and if I was teaching and in week 7 the Electoral College was actually meeting, I would want my students to be reflecting on that. And that's good for them because they're processing the information, but it's good for me as the instructor too, because I can see if they're getting it or not, and I can make adjustments. In addition to that, you'll notice that sometimes it's students asking each other questions, and that's really valuable as a learning experience. First of all, students have the feeling like they're comfortable enough to ask each other's questions in this community is really important. But when a student answers a question for another student, that's a great learning process. You have to figure out, do I understand the question? Do I know the answer? And then most importantly, can I communicate that answer effectively to my peers? And that is, if you're able to do that, you as the answerer are really doing some learning there. And we think that's really valuable. Anything else you want to add, Brian, before we jump in?
No, I mean, I think one of the things that we see is that the student flexibility, and revisiting conversations, and thinking of this less as an assignment where they check the box and more as something they do consistently throughout the semester really helps students sort of engage thoughtfully with these conversations, and you'll see a lot better, more interesting material being posted and consumed. And from that perspective, I think one of the other things to just think about, we're going to dive into a you know a good demo, but one of the things that you should think about as an instructor in Yellowdig is, content creation is not nearly as important in many cases as consuming content. And one of the things that happens in our model is you have multiple topics to sort of choose between. There's multiple conversations going on. A student might not participate in every single one of them, but in order to decide what they want to participate in, they actually read a lot more in this kind of framework, right? They have to read things to decide if they want to talk about it. And in making that decision, they're also participating in conversations they feel like they have something to add to, right? So they're consuming more of the content that's created and posted, and simultaneously they're contributing in more thoughtful ways. So we do see that this model actually produces sort of higher overall quality conversation, that students actually read a lot more. Uh,
And when we get into the platform, we'll talk about some of the ways you'll know that students are reading and how you can leverage those as well. All right, let's go. So
so
starting the semester, go ahead, Brian.
yeah, so this is the last slide before we jump into the platform, but a few things that I think are important to remember as you get started for a semester. Uh, because of all the things we just talked about, Yellowdig was designed as a single community, and the way the grading works is it's a single semester long assignment. So you should definitely make one assignment link in if you're using it attached to a learning management system, and that will create your one graded assignment. Um, if you want to have reminders in other parts of the course, we typically recommend that you hyperlink back to the assignment itself, so that students have to go through the assignment. And that's just because in order to set up grade passback, they have to click through a graded assignment link. So if there's only one link to Yellowdig and it is a graded assignment, it just simplifies that whole process. It ensures that students will definitely go through the link. Um, from that perspective, we also recommend that you talk about Yellowdig as a single semester long assignment, right? So each week they're accumulating more points towards their total goal, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Um, most student access issues are actually related to their specific tech or their settings in their, on their own platform that they're using. So in a lot of cases, it's better and faster for everyone if you tell them to just reach out to us if they're having, any kind of access issue. We'll get that taken care of as quickly as we possibly can. But because they're often sort of individually related, it's quicker for us to handle them individually with students rather than you collecting up, any students that might be having trouble and sort of telling us about them. And then the other thing that we recommend is that if you are planning to use Yellowdig attached to a learning management system, we typically would not recommend that you invite students using the email invites or the email the links that are in there, the share links that are in there. And the reason is because in order for students to get their grading passback set up, they are going to have to go through the learning management system anyway. And if you let students sort of just visit through those links, they can create duplicate accounts. If you are going to email invite them, make sure you're using their institutional email.
And just so you know, those share links and the invite links, invitations have other purposes. In fact, we just used a share link with you to invite you to the Yellowdig Instructor Support Community, the YISC. So those are often used for other types of non-course functions. So they exist for a reason, but they're not necessarily what you want to use in your purpose, for your purposes. All right. And remember, feel free to ask questions. You can answer them too, I suppose, in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Let's get into the platform. All right, so here's Yellowdig. I'm assuming that many of you have already seen it, but if you haven't, it's a single scrolling feed that resembles social media, and your students will intuitively know how to post and comment. But obviously it is not social media, it is your course community, and it is built for that purpose. So at the start of the semester, since we're talking about that, and assuming that some of you may have used Yellowdig before, why don't we go through the course creation and copy settings, Brian? So what Brian is showing you is, you could create a new community. If you have it in your learning management system, when you create that assignment link, it will give you the opportunity to launch a new community. But what we want to share, go ahead, Brian, I'll let you.
Yeah, so this is the same flow you will see if you are linking a community to a learning management system, you'll have to name the community. It will pull in the name of your course if you are using a learning management system. If you're creating it from within the platform, it'll look just like this. But you do have the ability to copy content from another course. So when I open this, I will see any community that I own that I've created previously, and I'll be able to copy content from that community. And I can also copy settings from any community. So if I want to create a template that I want to use for all of my courses, I can create a community and then just copy from that every time. A couple of things to think about. You will only see the ability to copy communities that you own in these drop downs by default. There is a template link in every community, and I'll show you that in a minute. There's a template link that you can copy and paste here from any community, right? So if you're part of an instructional design team and you want to create a template for a specific set of courses, you can create that template community, and then you would be able to share the template link from that community, and then any new person that was creating a community would be able to copy content and settings. The other thing I guess I would highlight is the copy content only copies posts and only copies posts that were created by either the owner or the facilitator. So it won't copy student posts for sort of privacy reasons, right? So if you want to create a template, obviously you're the owner of that course, you would own all the content, you could copy them.
And you could, if there was somebody who was going to be teaching your course for a semester while you weren't teaching it, you might want to copy it and that, give them the template in that regard. Copying the settings will copy the points and the point setup and the topics. I don't believe it copies accolades, so does it, Brian?
It should.
Okay, it should. So you may not want to use the posts that you used in a previous community because you may have been using them, temporarily related, what's going on in the real world. So you may just want to copy the points and the settings. So that's the use case for that. All right, moving on. You were going to share.
Just wanted to show quick in the basic settings basics here, that share link is right down here at the bottom, right? So if you were to paste that share link into the new community creation flow, it would give you the option to copy settings and content from the Business 101 community. And I could share that with anybody.
All right. Let's go back to the community itself. And let's talk about getting started with your students. A few things that we think work really well in making sure that your community gets off to a good start. And the first of those is really setting expectations with your students, explicitly sharing with them a few things. First of all, the purpose of the Yellowdig community. Why are we having this Yellowdig community associated with our course? The second thing, your role as the instructor in the course. And third, what's expected of them in the community. And one great way to do this is to go in Yellowdig itself, as Brian's sort of showing you here, to maybe type a little bit of an introduction. And then one thing that we think can be really helpful as far as modeling the behavior that you want for students. And in fact, again, we view these communities as being instructor modeled rather than instructor led. And you can start doing that right at the outset using this record video function, showing them, how that works and what you might get out of it. And if you were to click that, you could say something like, and you're going to see Brian instead of me.
On my secondary webcam here.
If you use your own camera, you'll probably see yourself rather than Brian, just to be clear. But if it were me, I would say something like, welcome to our Yellowdig community. The purpose of this community is for us to learn from each other, to share our own experiences and real world events as they occur related to our course content, and to ask and answer each other's questions. My role in this community is to be another participant, to be a citizen of this community like you are. I may occasionally post, I may occasionally comment on your posts, but don't expect me to be in there commenting on every single post that you do. These are conversations for you to have. Your role in this community is to earn your Yellowdig points as an assignment over the course of the semester. We expect you to have conversations, respectful conversations, academic conversations with your peers about these things, for you to bring in those events that are happening in the real world that relate to what you want to talk about, and obviously to earn your points. So if you say something like that and get it started in the record video function, you can start sharing a little bit of that passion that you have for the course itself, for the course content, and show them how you'd like them to interact.
Yeah, and a couple things I was demonstrating while Bob was talking is that there is a record, you get a little countdown, so you get some time to compose yourself. But also while you're recording, you can pause, right? So if you need a little bit of time to think through different segments, you can just resume that. You can get a nice, clip that will do all the things that you want to say.
Yeah, I love that feature personally. And so going along with that, yeah, one thing that while you're there, Brian, you can put more than one thing in a Yellowdig post, unlike a LinkedIn or Facebook or something like that. You can put that intro video. You can also do a poll. What do you, are you looking forward to learning about, this part of the course, that part of the course, or the other part of the course, or whatever you wanted to put up there. You can put in a drawing, all in the same post. So that's something that you may not be aware of. And Brian, scroll down just a little teeny bit, please. I want to point out that pin to the top. Now, by default, when you started your Yellowdig community, there are 2 default posts that, unless you've created your own template for your communities, that will be pinned. One of them will be pinned to the top. After a short period of time, you're probably going to want to unpin that post, but you have the ability as an instructor to post any particular post to the top for any particular period of time, just by clicking that pin to the post. And if it's a student post that you want to bring to the top of the community, how would you do that, Brian?
Yeah, you can go in and you can edit a post, and you would be able to then pin it to the top right there. You can easily clear that or not. I'm not going to actually do that, but you can pin any content to the top.
And let's talk now about points, because students want to understand points, and you should be empowered to help them with that. So let's go through the point setup, just so you have a way to talk about it with students. And as we've already mentioned, you have Yellowdig is a single assignment. In order to get that grade, students need to earn their full point total by the end of the semester, by the end of the term. And in fact, some instructors choose to mute the Yellowdig gradebook column in the learning management system during the semester, and instead have students focus on that Yellowdig point modal that Brian is sort of showing to you in that on the right side of the screen. And then obviously you clicked on it to show how the participation works. And as I hope you know, while students need to earn that full point complement, over the course of the semester, there is a weekly limiter, an earning period limiter, that makes it so students can't earn all of their points up front or at the end, and keeps them going back into the community. And the way they earn those points are through two kinds of points. The first kind of point are the participation points, the points that students get for creating posts and creating comments. So if Brian were to create a post and it met that minimum word content, he would get a number of points. And if I saw Brian's post and I commented on it and I met the minimum word criteria, I would get some points. But the change in the paradigm, the thing that gets students posting and commenting and creating really good conversations, are what we call the social points. Right. So going back to the scenario we just described, Brian created a post and I commented on it. We both got points for that. But Brian got additional points because I commented on his post. So hopefully that tells Brian, you know what, if I go in earlier in that earning period, I'm more likely to have more of my peers see my post, and hopefully they'll comment and react to it, meaning it'll be easier for me to get to my point total that week. So hopefully that will go a long way in ending the procrastination mindset. The second piece of that puzzle, though, is the one that really excites me, and that's now Brian has created that post, or no, this time I'm going to create the post. I'm going to create a post, and Brian and let's see who else, Alex and Bonnie and Devendra and Diane and Jean and Jennifer and John and Lisa and Scott and Steve all see my post because I went in there early in that earning period because I knew that they would see it, but they didn't comment or react to my post. Why not?
Yeah, so the reason that that typically happens is because the post is either not that thoughtful, not well written, um, doesn't sort of ask an interesting question or talk about something that's relevant, right? And so, what we see in addition to these social points, staving off procrastination, is that communities that have more of these, where students have to sort of earn them, and it can offset some of the work of posting and commenting, is that students post more thoughtful content for sure.
So the social points create not only an end to the procrastination, but also better conversations. That's the bottom line. Two other things before we leave points. First one I want to point out is that comments are worth at least as much per post or per word as posts. And the reason for that is because comments are important. Comments are the lifeblood to conversations. You know, anyone can post something, but what we want to do is create conversations. Plus, not every student is comfortable necessarily starting a conversation, but they're more than happy to jump in and add their perspective at that point. We want them to be able to earn their points that way as well. The second piece of the puzzle there is reactions. Sometimes student or instructors think that reactions, giving a thumbs up to a post, is something that they don't feel comfortable with. They don't want to award points for that kind of behavior. But let's clarify that. First of all, when a student gives a reaction, they do not get any points. The person getting the reaction gets those points. So that's number one. The second thing is, what do those reactions actually indicate? Brian?
Yeah, I mean, it's the clearest indicator that a student has read the post and that they liked it in most cases, right? So students don't react to posts that they haven't read because they have no incentive to do so. Like you just pointed out, they don't get points for doing that. So typically reactions are an indication that students read and liked the post.
And by the way, if a student gives multiple reactions to a post or comment, the other student only gets points once for that. So rest
Yeah,
assured.
it's only the first reaction from each student that yields points. So it's also something that's not sort of like easily gamed or whatever.
All right.
It would
So we hope that'll help you explain points to your students and have a good understanding of it. Two other important things that we think that you need to be aware of and to take advantage of as you start your semester are topics and accolades. Topics keep your content, your community, and the conversations there course relevant, and they do a few things for you. They're defined by you, these topics. You get to name these topics. We would encourage you to name them after the important concepts that you want students to discuss in the course, whether those be your top level syllabus subject matter or otherwise coming up with ways to create those conversations you want students to have. We would encourage you not to name them week 1 or module 7, because that's going to kill those ongoing conversations and make it harder to find. Topics are filters, as Brian has demonstrated. When you click on a topic, it will filter the feed to show only those conversations under that topic, making it easier to jump back into those topics. It also makes, as topics are required, students can't complete the posting activity unless they choose one of those topics. So that's going to keep those conversations on point. It's also going to make students consider what the content is and where they should bring it in. And thirdly, yeah, that's really important that Brian's pointing out, make sure topics are required. And the third thing is that those topics, oh, go ahead, Brian, you're going to show that part.
Oh, I was just going to say, we do recommend for most courses that topics are required. And we do have the ability now to move topics around. So, if you want a particular topic to be easier to find at the top of the list when students are choosing it, you can move those up. Otherwise, we would recommend sort of alphanumeric sorting of them, most likely, so that students can find the topic that they're specifically looking for. There is the ability to edit these topics. change the name as you like, change the color. You can disable topics so it won't show up in the pull down list when students are creating posts. So that's what that does. Typically, we would recommend that you disable a topic rather than delete it, only because if you delete the topic, you will also be sort of like deleting that association of the post and any data that shows you what the topics are doing.
By the way, I just want to say this is one of those new functions in Yellowdig. We didn't previously have the ability to reorder topics or disable a topic, and we would encourage you to disable them rather than delete them as you're going along. The last thing I want to say about topics is that you have the ability to see how your students are engaging in topics. It's a tool for you to see the content they're focusing on by going to community health and clicking on topics there, and you'll be able to see on a global basis which of those topics they're spending time on and which ones they're not, allowing you to spend more time on that. And if you scroll down, you can see how those individual students are also spending time on topics. All right, let's talk about accolades.
All right.
So accolades are badges that you can award to specific posts or comments that give point values to students. And they're a wonderful way for you as the instructor to show that you're present in the community, that the community is important to you and that you're there without feeling the need to comment and post or react to every single student conversation that's going on. Just a few of these well-placed will also demonstrate to students the kind of behaviors that you're looking for in the community without sidetracking the conversation. If you were to jump in and comment on every conversation, then students would realize that they need to please you in these conversations or react to you, and the conversations can either be stopped there or will no longer be interactive between the students. So accolades are a good way to avoid that and still show students the kind of behaviors you want to see. And Brian is now demonstrating the verified response accolade, which is an accolade that we recommend for allowing students to ask and answer each other's questions. And as he's demonstrating again, this is a filter allowing students to see only those posts and comments under that accolade. But in this, the use case for this accolade is that if you allow students to ask and answer each other's questions, like we've discussed before, that's a wonderful opportunity for them, for the answerer even, to learn. But students still want to know, what is the instructor approved answer? And Brian, how would you add an accolade to that? How would you add that accolade?
Yeah. So they're really quickly added just right here at the bottom. And any that you've configured, you can add or subtract really easily. And then when you close it, you see that it's popped up there. The student will get any points that are associated with that.
But they'll know that that's the one that you said was the answer that they should depend on. So that's going to be very helpful to them.
Yeah, while we're talking about those buttons at the bottom, these all show up for instructors. For students, they'll see the reaction and the flagging post functions. But all of these functions were previously available in this 3-dot menu. We pulled them onto every post and comment so that they're really easy for instructors to get to and add.
All right. A couple of new things that we wanted to point out are reminders. Let's go to reminders, and I'll let you talk about those.
Yeah, so reminders are exactly what they might sound like. It's a reminder to participate if the student hasn't been active in the community recently. What we've released is the first of a few different planned notifications. But right now we have a low engagement notification. Essentially, you can, for your community, configure students to receive a reaction or receive a reminder after 5 days. And then that reminder will get repeated in this framework every 7 days for a total of 4 times. That just makes sure that students won't get spammed with these notifications if they're deciding not to participate. But the low engagement notification is here. It basically quickly says, hey, we noticed you haven't been in your community for a while. here's the community, and we provide a link to a post that they haven't seen, but that has been interacted with a lot in that community. And it's just a quick and easy way for our system to remind them to come back to Yellowdig. I will mention this one is not associated with points, right? So it's just merely that a student hasn't participated for 5 days. They'll get a reminder to come back basically and say, we're missing you. Down here, you see which students are set to receive a notification coming up. And you will also be able to see who has received the notification. Every individual user in Yellowdig has the ability to control their own notifications. So we've also highlighted whether the student has opted out of this specific notification or not. You'll be able to see whether they're actually getting them or not. If you notice that a student has them turned off, but is not participating, you might want to reach out to them via another avenue, like an email or direct message.
So I just wanted to say again, we're happy to take your questions in the Q&A at the bottom right. While we're waiting for that, I think it would be really to talk for a second about, again, the instructor role, and when you choose to comment or post, how you might want to consider doing that. So as far as posting itself, the benefits of you posting occasionally, especially at the outset, is it's going to start to model the kinds of behavior of the posts that you want to see. But we don't recommend that you are constantly posting in Yellowdig, and also not on any particular schedule. Occasionally posting, showing an article that you might find interesting or important, asking the occasional question, and more than anything, maybe sharing your passion for your subject matter through the act of posting. Commenting, on the other hand, you may occasionally want to do if you see a good conversation or a good post that isn't getting the traction that you'd like it to get. If you want to continue that conversation, that's an opportunity for you to do that. But as far as when you decide to comment, what kind of comment would be best to use, Brian? What do we want to avoid in commenting, and what do we want to encourage?
Yeah, so when Bob was talking about accolades, he sort of said, if you jump into every conversation that you might want to recognize somebody who did good content, you can end up shutting down some of those conversations. Specifically, if you're just going to say something like interesting article or really great post, I would recommend using, an accolade to communicate that. Because what can happen if you start commenting and only doing that is that you basically say, okay, this post is good and everything here has kind of been said, and that can definitely shut down the conversation. So part of the reason for using accolades to communicate that is, you can show those that you think are great without kind of getting into the commenting. More importantly, I think the style of commenting would be, hey, say interesting article or great post, but then, try to ask a question that extends the conversation. Try to make a point or point out something in the article that extends the conversation, or maybe share another separate article that speaks to something that was mentioned in the first article. And in that way, model what you really want other students to be doing, which is building up a conversation from a starting point that incorporates new ideas, new thoughts, new links, new things to explore as it's going, right? So that modeling is not only what we hope that students are doing, but we want the instructors to definitely be doing that. And if you do comment in that way, you're definitely more likely to help get extended, really deep conversations.
Okay, great. So there are two questions I think we can go ahead and address them now. John asked, do you recommend off for pass grades CLMS? And the answer is no. We definitely recommend that you enable the grade passback. What we were saying was that you can mute that grade column during the semester to avoid student confusion, because that grade, as it passes back, remember, Yellowdig is a single assignment for the entire semester. So as the grade passes back, it's reflecting a grade during the semester, but that grade is not fully earned at that point. And also that grade will fluctuate. It will go down at the beginning of each earning period and show a proportion of the total points that students could earn. So alternatively, and actually, hopefully to save you a lot of trouble and thought, if you direct students to the Yellowdig point modal instead, that box that shows, that whole box there that shows the points that students have earned, this can eliminate a lot of questions, because this is the single point of truth that will always show students exactly where they are in Yellowdig. And if they click on that My Participation button that Brian's showing, they have a whole bunch of ways to look at what their grade is. And I think it's really important to scroll down and show that activity log there, although there won't be anything in this particular activity log. But they can see each and every activity, whether they got points and whether they didn't get points for that activity in the grade. So this is the single point of truth that I would direct students at. And at the end of the semester, John, you can unmute that grade column and the students will see what their Yellowdig grade is.
Yeah, one thing that I think is really helpful for people in understanding the point system is actually this visualization of points over time. So this is maybe a bad example because it's a demo board and this person hasn't earned very many points. You can see they only have 190 points of the 14,000 they would need to that point in the semester, right? And this is actually the total goal for the semester at 17,000. So if students are earning according to the pace that they need to maintain, their points, this yellow line, will be above the line created by these blue dots. And what these blue dots is, each one of these blue dots is just that the target for the period, right? But because they can earn a little bit more than that target, they can earn and keep their points above that target all throughout the semester until they achieve their total goal. So really the idea of Yellowdig here is that that max earnable per week is really just meant to keep students coming back all throughout the semester. It's not really meant to be a deadline. They don't fill a point bucket each week. They actually are adding every point to their total from the very beginning.
All right, and Scott asks, and hi Scott, have recommended point configurations changed since fall 2020 or spring 2021? And if so, could you address the changes and the reasons? I think it's a good question.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we've definitely been making changes to our recommendations over time. And I would have to go back and check exactly every single time that we've edited them. But the reason that we're editing them is pretty simple. We're doing a lot of research on the platform, and we're learning what is creating better outcomes. And we're also receiving feedback from our users around, student reactions to those point settings. I will say that these points are set up with the idea that this would be about a 3 credit course, with Yellowdig being worth somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20% of the grade, right? So it's set with that sort of base level expectation. If your course, if you want it to be a little bit easier, you can increase the number of points for these areas, and we would recommend increasing all of them, keeping the proportions similar between the categories, right? Or if you want to make it significantly harder, you can reduce these, but make the proportions, like I said, relative to one another about the same. It's really the proportions that change behavior, and here's why, right? If a comment is worth a certain amount per word and a post is worth a certain amount per word, if you suddenly increase the value of a post and you leave the value of a comment the same, students are going to start posting more because they get more points for it, right? And so, these numbers have been selected based on different investigations that we've done in the platform to sort of optimize what I would call voluntary behaviors, right? So when you're giving students points for posting and commenting, they have to do that, right? But the things they don't have to do are view posts. They don't have to react to other students' posts. They don't have to revisit the platform that often. And what we're trying to do is to find the point values across a whole bunch of different setups that yield the best overall health outcomes, which includes voluntary posting beyond the point limit, posting more words than are strictly required, viewing posts, commenting more is usually associated with those things. So that's the other thing.
All right, so I'm sorry, we've got a couple more questions. I think we should, because we're talking about points, we should go to Scott's first, and then we'll go to John's. And then there are a few other things that maybe we can show real quickly. So can pointing allocations being changed during the course of the semester? The simple answer is yes. However, there are some thoughts that you might have about that.
Yeah, so we released recently a simplification to the point system. And before the course start date, this screen, the points setting screen changes a little bit. And after it, we've put some of those settings down here, which can't easily be changed. So we're hiding the sort of additional settings after the first day to earn points, because if you change the point windows or you change the overall expectations and the buffer, those things will actually change how students have earned points, so that the system can be really flexible to allow you to make those changes if you want to. While the course is running, you can edit the point earning rules as often as you want. And they only apply going forward from the time that you change them. So for 1 week, you absolutely can, decrease the value of a post or increase the value of a post. Or you can tweak these settings if you're not happy with what you're seeing in the first couple of weeks. And so maybe at least one pro tip is, one reason to just tell students where the point earning rules are in the platform is that if you really need to, you can change these and the values will change. You wouldn't have to change your syllabus. You can just have them go there.
So there is an option to retroactively change all the points, but you're probably not going to want to do that. So just
yeah, if you need to reset the points, there is an option to do that in the point settings, but it's destructive in that you can't revert it if you do that.
But just changing the ongoing values moving forward shouldn't create any kinds of problems like that, as long as you communicate it to your students. The next question John asks is, how do you change name and community? So you go to settings, as Brian was showing there. I just want to point out to you, that's on the left, that's an area you have, and then basics. And that's where you can do that. And you can name it whatever you want. While we're talking about that, well, it's not really about the same thing, but changing names and things like that, I want to call attention to the 3 little icons at the bottom left of the screen on all the way to the left. And those are the your own avatar with your profile and account settings. And many times instructors and students do not adjust those at all, which will give you just your username, which by default will be probably your email address. As you can see in this case, the username has been changed to Paul Professor, and the first name and last name have been entered. I want to point out that you have the ability to direct how you are addressed in Yellowdig. So if you'd like to be, use your title, put that in the first name with your first name. So Dr. Paul or Professor Brian or what have you there, and then add your last name, and that will change it in the profile. You can also, Brian, can you show on your avatar how to add a profile picture? Because although it's pretty intuitive, sometimes people forget about that. So you just go to my profile and upload an image there and let students know who we are, make it a little easier. And again, encourage them to do the same. The next thing that I think is pretty important and great new is the new help widget. This help widget is a great place. It basically mimics our knowledge base, and you can get it right in the platform. So anything that you want to search for, you can do it right there. Hopefully that'll be your first line of answers for any questions that you have. I know we only have a few minutes left. Oh, Scott asked another good question. do you recommend that teachers aim to meet the same periodic point goals as students? So probably not. Again, if you're all over the platform, they're going to be looking to you to respond to you, to go to your comments and to all of your things that you're doing. However, early on in the community, it is really a decent idea for you to be present. I mean, you should always be present, but for you to be participating a little bit more to get things up and running and to let them understand the kinds of behaviors that they want to should be doing. And Brian, you want to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I would build on that just a little bit. The reason that we created and that we show instructors the point set up here is, first of all, we do want instructors to think of themselves as a member of the community. And we thought it would be really a lot easier for people to understand the point system if they were seeing all of the same functions as students, right? So if you're interacting with this module in your course, it is exactly what a student would be seeing for their own participation. It will be showing you yours. So you can get a good sense for how your participation is accumulating in the community according to those rules. What we have also found is that if instructors are creating a few comments per week, it definitely has a positive influence on students, especially if you're doing the kind of style that I was talking about, which is like jumping into conversations as a real participant and adding interesting things to them. It can definitely help with engagement, right? So you have to be careful that your own experience is not sort of taking over everything, and we don't think that you should be earning like appreciably more points than your students in general. But if I had to give like a rule of thumb for the first few weeks, it would be good for you to earn about the number of points you would expect a student. That will also give you a really good idea about how much actual effort it requires. And so for future runs of the course, you can decide whether that amount of effort is reasonable or not, or you could even edit, as we talked about, on the fly while the course is running.
I want to add, excuse me, one important thing to that whole conversation, and that's one way that instructors often end up with a lot of social points or a lot of points is because students respond to their posts. So you can please make sure that you're explicitly telling students not to reply to your posts, to create their own posts and comments. You don't need the points. You're going to get an A in the course, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, just to build on that a little bit, right? If you are, especially if you're doing any kind of prompting, or anything where you're focusing students on a specific thing that you want them to do, we always recommend that they create their own posts rather than just responding in the comments. It becomes hard for students to track if these conversations get too long, and if you have 100 students all replying to one post, the conversations get kind of intertwined. You want students to create a post that they then have conversations around. And that's definitely part of the recommendation.
So we're at time. I'm absolutely willing to stick around a little more, and I know John has another question that we want to answer. But if you have to go, thank you for being with us today, and if you have to stay, thank you for being with us today too. And I just want to mention again that we do have an office hours session, I believe, on the 18th. You'll probably be getting an email about that if you were at this. But it's also on our website. You can look up all the office hours, but I believe it's September 18th, and we'd love to have you there if you have any questions for us. So let's go to John's question, and if you have to drop off, thanks again. So John asked, recommend enabling anonymous posting. So let's just talk about anonymous posting for a minute here. So let's show where it is, first of all. So anonymous posting, if it's enabled for your Yellowdig community, is available on a post or comment basis. It's certainly not available on a universal basis. And what does it mean to post anonymously? So as Brian showed you, a student or you can post anonymously by clicking that make post anonymous or Make Comment Anonymous button. And you'll notice that that tag appears on it up at the top. And there's a little question mark next to that that shows you exactly what happens. So if you click that, you'll see what the visibility rules are. And basically the rules are that while other students won't be able to see who posted or made that comment, the instructor always will, and the student will know that as well. Anonymous posting is great for those hard to ask questions, depending on the type of course that you're in. If, psychology course or sociology course where there's questions that might be of a more sensitive nature and a student might not feel comfortable associating their name with that question, that can be really useful. Although sometimes we want to maybe not have students anonymously post in other types of situations. So that's up to you whether you want to make that available. Brian, where would you make that decision?
I believe it's in basic settings. I shut it off. Is that where it is?
I believe it is, yes.
Yeah, there it is. I haven't actually had to shut that one off.
But that's where you would make that decision if you want to do it. And again, keep in mind, you as the instructor can always see who is making those posts, and students should know that you'll know that you'll be able to see whether that happens or not.
John, at a high level, whether we would recommend it or not, I don't think we have a ton of data on that. It seems to be a very personal choice for individual instructors, whether they enable it or not. And then it seems to be a pretty personal choice for students, whether they use it or not. We do see that it's used for maybe 10% of posts in a lot of communities where it is turned on. And it seems like students like the ability to use it when it is available, but it doesn't seem alternatively like they do anything that would, abuse it in any way or sort of use it inappropriately. And of course, one of the reasons is, their instructor can still see who made the post. So I don't feel like I have a strong recommendation one way or another. We do see it used a lot for Q&A in science courses, and we see it used in courses where there are sort of sensitive topics that people might share a personal story that they otherwise would be unwilling to share, and some of those can be really impactful on the course. If somebody sort of had a personal experience that would really be informative to the topic.
All right. Oh, there's another question. I didn't even see that.
Yeah. So to pin to the top is just in the editor. You can pin anything to the top when you're creating it, or you can also go into any post and edit the post and pin it to the top.
And remember to remove the pin from the previous post that is at the top.
Well, it will automatically remove it. You can only have one pin to the top at a time.
But
yeah, there's.
Yeah, the point I was going to make was you don't always have to have a post pin.
Oh, yes.
So
yeah.
Especially for those getting started posts, please make sure you unpin those after all your students are in the community. That'll only get in the way and be sort of annoying after a period of time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just so everybody knows, students start to get annoyed by them. That's the one bit of feedback we have, and we've talked about letting students dismiss them. Because if there's one post that's just constantly pinned to the top for the entire semester, especially, they have to scroll past it every time they come in. So it can be sort of jarring after they've read it for the 50th time.
So we'd like to thank you again for showing up for this. We hope it was helpful. We would love to hear your feedback. You can either send it to bob@yellowdig.com or otherwise let us know what you're thinking of us, of what we're doing. But we just want to be there to help you. We care about what you're doing, and we really think that the platform, the Yellowdig pedagogy and platform, can do a great job for you if you take the time to leverage it, which you're here, so you are. So thank you again.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck with your semesters. If there's any other questions, I can stick around for a few minutes, but
I'm going to turn off the recording now. And